I will try and talk to you about what's happening in the tourism industry from a very strategic point of view, and in particular, talking about how destination marketing organizations, that's tourist boards like Turismo de Portugal and many others around the world, are approaching digital. And I have to say, from the level of speakers we've seen here today, which is brilliant, I think you'll see that the tourism industry is focusing very much on a strategic level, but not really using technology in the way that they should be. And I have a few examples, but they really are just a few that's happening when it comes to tourism. So I'm going to be talking about the trends and challenges. I thought before I get started, I would actually just take a look at how far we've come in such a short period of time. Because all the numbers and all the data and all the projects that we've seen today have been very inspiring. But if we think back to just a short time ago, in 1993, there were only 130 websites that existed. I mean, that almost seems hard to believe. I remember connecting with CompuServe back in the day, and I was one of the few people, but I didn't think at the time that I was jumping onto what was a revolution. And this figure has just grown and grown and grown. So in 1996, that became 1,000 sites, and then later on in 2012, that became 644 million. Oh, that's a big jump from that initial number of 130. And today, we've hit that big figure of more than 1 billion websites. So we're talking really a lot of content that's out there on the web. What we've been hearing about during this conference is post-website. It's the Internet of Things. It's connecting the digital fabric of the environment, which is really the next level that we're going to here. I've been pulling up some data that, honestly, I don't really understand, but I love these words, and I thought it would give the translators a run for their money. So 1 exabyte is 1 billion gigabytes. I'm not a technician, so I didn't know that. Yes, you're not impressed. And then I found some, more numbers, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. So many new words are coming to me when I started looking at where things are going. The projected increase in internet traffic between 2014 and 2015 is 200 exabytes. It's already completely out of my depth as a marketing person to try and understand that. And these words and these numbers just keep getting bigger and bigger. So there's more and more words that help explain what is happening today, which is this digital revolution. In 2013, the data created shared annually represented 4.4 zettabytes. And by 2020, that's going to be tenfold, 44 zettabytes. So that's a really, really huge figure, if you can even begin to quantify that. I think a lot of the people in the room who are involved in technology are probably looking at me thinking, that guy doesn't really know what he's talking about here. But that's okay, because I'm coming from the marketing side. And what I'm telling you is that the tourism industry is really, really behind when it comes to getting on top of this. And of course, what's key here is that only 5% of all of that data is actually being analyzed and used today. So there's so much potential when you actually look at it. A recent study in the US looked at how consumers, how they look at their own personal data. And 75% of consumers actually said that they don't mind using their personal data to improve products and services. So that's actually very positive, because consumers are willing to let go of some of their private information if it's going to improve their experience with a brand. But on the other hand, there is a sort of paradox taking place there, because not all consumers actually want their private data used, and they do actually have a lot of concerns. A very similar figure, 60% also said they had concerns about their own internet security. So we have this kind of privacy paradox which is taking place. But as a marketeer, I'm always thinking, well, how can I use this data, and how can we use customer data to better increase our interaction with customers, to better tailor products and services so that they are personalized? And this is now the big buzzword which is taking place in the tourism industry. And of course it's tricky, but what we do know is that technology is evolving very, very rapidly. Every single year we see new technology being released, going very mainstream, and we see huge advances in what we're actually able to do with that as everyday consumers. And if you just take this lovely picture here of this happy couple sharing their photos on a tablet, this is how inspiration happens when it comes to tourism and travel. It's very natural, but it's all happening on digital devices. You know, just 2 or 3 years ago, I would speak to the tourism industry about the importance of using compelling images. And this was the kind of statistic which really impressed the tourism industry. They were writing notes and say, wow, 94% say that we have to use authentic images. And then they would go back to the boardroom, and then they would tell their CEO, oh, we have to get user photos. We have to get user photos. We've gone so far from that now when we look at things today. Actually, video has overtaken that on a very large scale. In the last 12 months, according to the most recent Google Traveler report, there's been 118% growth in online video. And this has been driven by 2 channels in particular. The first is, well, Google Sites, the most dominant web platform today, which is really growing thanks to YouTube in terms of video. And the second is Facebook. Probably doesn't come as a great surprise. I was sitting in the audience and I noticed pretty much everybody was doing something on Facebook. For me, that was a surprise because there is a generation which has abandoned Facebook as well. I'll get to that in a minute. When we talk about tourism and marketing places, marketing destinations, we speak a lot about user-generated content and the importance of engaging our visitors to become ambassadors about our destinations. And what we've seen is a big shift in how people actually communicate and share information. Just a few years ago, we would talk about 1% of your customers who would actually go onto a site like TripAdvisor and share their own experiences. And we would talk about how, as a marketing person, you have to engage that 1%. You have to make sure that 1% shares that good experience. These are your ambassadors. What we see now is that that's just been blown completely out the window, and every single visitor is your ambassador. Look at this statistic. 48% of business travelers are sharing video on their trips. So I'm a business traveler. I haven't actually done it yet because the internet hasn't been fast enough. But usually, I share my videos and I tell people to go and visit where I'm going. It's how we communicate with our friends and family. And this is how we create inspiration to travel. It's very natural and it's very much word of mouth. But that's a huge revolution which has taken place thanks to technology. When we talk to the tourism industry, we always talk about the travel cycle. And I've noticed from today that a lot of you are not directly working in tourism. You're working in technology and solutions and all sorts of other very complementary sectors. So just to explain, in tourism, I have taken the cheeky decision to demonstrate this around our logo, so I do apologize. You have a number of key stages. Now, you actually have a lot more stages than that if you study a textbook. So anyone here who's doing a tourism school is probably thinking, hang on, there's about 10 stages. Why is he only showing 4? But I've actually just simplified it because there are just a number of key stages. You have the dreaming stage, where you create awareness. People have no idea where they want to go. They just want to go somewhere hot, or they want a rural holiday, or they like cooking and they want to do something where they can enjoy that. Then you have the planning stage. That's the next stage where they've decided, I would like to go somewhere. I'm choosing between these 3 places, and they start to put their ideas together. And then booking, and then sharing. And typically the sharing has been right at the end of the trip. And of course, this has really changed now. Just looking at that in more detail, what's happening in those stages is quite interesting. So in that awareness stage, we see a huge shift towards storytelling. It's really nice to come to a conference and not hear the word storytelling every 5 seconds, because when it comes to marketing and tourism, that's all you hear. So I'm really pleased to actually probably be the first one today to say that word. So it is fresh. Storytelling, getting other people to tell others about your destination is very, very, very powerful. Suggestions. I've taken actually an example from Pinterest here, but there's a million examples of how people start to gather information and ideas. And what's key here is having a lot of information about your destination on the web in different verticals, different niches, so that people can start to gather their ideas based on what they're interested in. Opinions have really, we don't really think of TripAdvisor being such a huge global player as a disruptor, but when they came on the scene, they were certainly a disruptor. They certainly challenged the traditional accommodation sector, and all of the accommodation places that had 5-star ratings suddenly found that they were only 2-star on TripAdvisor because they actually didn't give customers what they wanted. So they've been a huge disruptive force. We now know that customer reviews are shaping entirely the decision process, almost completely. And then when it comes to sharing your moments, the hashtag, I often think to myself, whoever invented the hashtag should be a millionaire, because it is such a simple concept, but it allows us as technology people, but also as consumers, to organize our thoughts and our content. And as marketeers, it allows us to pull content together and throw it out there in a really organized way. So the job of content creation has completely changed. So the first is looking at that. The second is the digital experience. We often think about the experience we have in a destination, but as we know now from today's event, that our entire environment is becoming increasingly connected, we have to think about the digital visitor experience. There is no longer a difference between the visitor experience and the digital experience. The two are completely inherent to one another. And as new generations grow up, this will just become more and more the case. So when it comes to actually promoting a destination, we have to think about how we can make our online experiences engaging as possible, using a lot of immersive content and crowdsourced content to really show people what the place has to offer. When it comes to planning, we have to think about how can we provide a digital Swiss Army knife, not necessarily through one site, could be through many, through solutions, opening up data, making it available, giving our customers all the tools to do whatever they want with it. Somebody mentioned earlier, I think it was our friend from Barcelona, about the need to have a different app for each transport system in different cities around the world. Well, I actually know what that is. It's called Google Maps, and everybody who travels regularly is using Google Maps and not going to the different transport providers, because there is a single solution, because they've opened up their data. When it comes to booking, we often talk about optimizing the booking funnel, and this is really important, and especially when it comes to mobile, making that as quick and pain-free as possible. And the thing that I love, I heard this year on the BBC, was a quote from somebody who was talking very seriously about whether internet should be considered a human right. Whether you think it should or not, whether you even want to enter that discussion, when we talk about tourism, it certainly is considered a human right. And it's really important that we enable our visitors to be connected at every single stage of their travel, because that's how you create ambassadors. And the third point, before I go into some examples, is the importance of thinking about mobile. Mobile has changed absolutely everything. We used to talk only about how it's changed the in-trip experience during someone's travel. But we now know that it actually impacts every single stage, including the point long before they travel. People are now finding inspiration on the metro in the morning when they go to work. So we have seen a huge change here that's been driven by mobile. When we look at around the world, we see, first of all, in tourism, we see a huge importance from CEOs with this problem of this "we need an app" syndrome. And we see loads and loads of tourist boards that have developed apps without any strategy, without any thinking behind it. And this is now a problem that the tourism industry is starting to have to recover from, because there's a lot of graveyard apps out there which were created just because the CEO wanted one, because a competitor wanted one. And what I'm saying to you today is that it's really, really important to understand who your visitor is before you start creating apps and things like that for them. All of what we've seen today is so exciting. It's easy to get carried away and just go and do something. But you need to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, and you understand how it's going to change the experience that your customers have with your brand or your destination. So, I mean, just as an example, if you look at some of the emerging markets, we see big differences in the types of device used, the types of devices used. So, actually, in Brazil, India, and China, multimedia phones and feature phones are much more dominant than iPhones and even Android. So we have to consider sometimes the lowest common denominator if our target markets are those three markets, because we're talking about very simple mobile web, not having a brilliant iPhone application that perhaps isn't going to be the right solution for these markets. So I'm going to go into each stage, and I'm going to look at some examples of what's happening in tourism. Who here would consider themselves, before I show this, who would consider themselves working in marketing as opposed to any other field in technology? Wow, one person. Okay, great. That's you as well. You're a self-made marketeer. I think you market yourself very well. Well, in marketing, we have seen millions and millions and millions of dollars thrown into Facebook And everybody's tried a Facebook campaign. Even a bed and breakfast has probably tried a Facebook campaign. And tourist boards have put in their entire budgets into Facebook. And there's nobody from Facebook here, right? I always have to check this if I do mention anything bad about this, because I could get in a lot of trouble. No such thing as a free lunch. I just put that there because we've been pouring our money into social media, and we haven't been thinking about it very strategically. And I thought I would show you, before I say anything else bad about Facebook, an example of a really great campaign that was run by South Africa Tourism, where they actually created a Facebook app. Now, nobody is creating Facebook apps anymore, I accept. So this isn't the future, this is the past. But this is a brilliant example of how a tourist board has been innovative at a certain point in their history and decided to create something that really, really helped engage with people and share the experience. What you could do is add the app and send your Facebook to Cape Town, and it would automatically post on your behalf a diary every single day of the week about your trip in Cape Town, and you didn't have to go there. I recently heard about a teenager in Britain who had spent the last year in her bedroom, and she pretended to her parents that she was backpacking around Asia by putting a load of content online. And I haven't yet found out which tourist board is behind that, because I'm sure it's not true. It's just a PR stunt. But this is very similar. You wouldn't do this now because nobody uses Facebook apps. But I think there are a few examples of very innovative ideas in tourism. And this is one of them. I hope nobody watching from all of our international destinations is watching the stream here, because they're probably going to kill me for saying that. Instagram. Instagram is the next step for Facebook. You know, they've realized that mobile is changing everything and that they need to have new platforms and new ways to engage, and they've bought Instagram, and it's a great move. And we see, you know, people now sharing all sorts of random things thanks to their mobile phones. So they share their gym routines, they share their milkshakes, and I actually thought myself a year or so ago, this isn't really how you engage and get people excited about your destination. But I was wrong, because when I started to look at it, I realized there's niches taking place in Instagram, and this is what's very interesting. You now start to have various different niche verticals where you have a very strong following on a very specific subject. So one I think was my favorite was an Instagrammer, that's what they're called. I'm actually a photographer by trade originally, so it's a bit strange to call them Instagrammers. But an Instagrammer is now one of the most popular Instagrammers, is someone who takes photos of metro systems around the world in a very artistic way. And actually what they're doing is creating a lot of interest and awareness about that to their followers. And of course you have this in so many different verticals, whether it's food, whether it's outdoor travel, whether it's a specific, very unique thing. And I think when we look at a region like here in northern Portugal, it's really a lot of potential when we talk about niche tourism and niche marketing, because this is where there is a potential future which perhaps has never been realized or even managed to be communicated in an effective way before. And it's a matter of getting those really influential people and getting them to share really unique experiences. So Instagram moves on, that's old news. They develop new things like hyperlapse, and then we see new things coming on which replace that. And actually what we start to realize is that the social web is constantly changing, that Facebook is only one platform of many. And there's, just put your hand up if you know this little guy here. Yeah? Now put your hand up. Now keep your hand up if you're a student. If you're not a student, put your hand down. Yeah, similar people. So in Snapchat, for those of you who don't know, Snapchat is the new revolution taking over the teens. And actually what really amazed me, and I should really learn to take things like this more seriously, is that 70% of college students in the US between 18 and 24 are using Snapchat on a daily basis. This is a platform that I disregarded as not very important. But if that is your market, that's a very important channel to consider. And actually, what's even more interesting is that, on the contrary, Facebook is only getting 11% using that on a daily basis from the same market group. So we're actually seeing that channels we thought that would be there forever are actually being replaced by new channels. And this is a continuously evolving picture. And actually, what's really funny about Snapchat, for those of you who don't know, is that Snapchat is a channel where your content gets deleted in 10 seconds after it's been sent to somebody. So as a marketeer, it's very difficult to understand where the value is with that. However, there are some actually good marketing examples, so fear not, it can be used. Going back to storytelling, I would just like to share one of the most inspiring stories that I've seen in this area, which is the work of South Africa Tourism. They've really engaged hundreds and hundreds of bloggers around the world and got them all to come to South Africa, who are focusing on different niches and different verticals, from adventure travel to food travel. And they've actually got them all to share their various different unique experiences in South Africa by creating blog trips and Insta walks and all sorts of new ideas where they can create very powerful content, and organized all of that with a simple hashtag, Meet South Africa. We're starting to see more and more tourist boards working with bloggers, but they're really one of the best, and they've created such a plethora of different content, from really great posts and opinions right through to very powerful images and videos. The importance of tablet devices and the fact that tablets have now invaded our personal space. Our time spent in front of the TV is only 50% watching TV, and the other 50% is watching something on our tablet devices. So our advertisers who put money into television, if they're not thinking about the digital fulfillment on a tablet, they're wasting their money, because they only have 50% of the attention that they used to have. But there's also an opportunity there. And what we're seeing is, while technology is becoming more and more personal, there is an opportunity for what we would refer to as long-format content. That's basically rich media. It can be a 10-minute film if it's really, really good. But you have to earn that. It has to be really good. And while I was just gathering some thoughts for this, I thought one thing that's really a missed opportunity in tourism is this term here, trendjacking. Trendjacking is the act of capitalizing on something that's creating a lot of buzz and using it for your own marketing purposes. And there are many, many good examples, but not that many in tourism. You all know what happened this year. Luckily, I can still say that it's the end of the year. The World Cup in Brazil. 280 million online interactions. That is absolutely huge. That's the biggest number of interactions for any single event. Probably doesn't come as a surprise. Before that, the Olympics was the biggest, and before that. So obviously, we get more and more connected. But what's really interesting is how brands have started to think about the opportunity with that many interactions. At the highest point, there were 580,000 tweets per minute taking place during the Germany and Brazil game. We all remember that. I don't watch football, but this one I could not, and I was tweeting as well, because it was hilarious to watch. I just kept seeing those goals go in, and I was, joining in. And it's very participative now. The way we consume media is participative. We sort of think that we're very isolated now with technology, but it's actually the opposite. We're very much connected, but we're connected in a very different way. And there's really an opportunity there, because some brands, and I will show you a great example here. You all remember the Suarez bite? He created a bit of a stir. There was a 10,000% increase in the hashtag Suarez. I don't think anybody expected that one coming. And obviously then everybody was talking about it. But Snickers, does Snickers exist in Portugal? Because I noticed some chocolates don't make it to every country, which is always interesting. And then some don't make it back to the UK and Belgium, which I like to try. So Snickers, their big thing is like the bite. You know, it's a manly kind of chocolate bar. And this is how they market themselves. So they thought, wow, that's a really great opportunity there. So they actually posted a sponsored tweet. So they did put some money into some advertising, encouraging, what does it say? I forgot exactly what more satisfying than in Italian. So they actually encouraged people to go, encouraged Suarez actually to go and bite a Snickers next time he's feeling hungry. And of course, this is great content used in a marketing context which can be shared and will be shared and will get people talking. So as a brand, they were very, very smart to jump on that. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what about travel and tourism? You know, that's a big global brand. It's a chocolate bar. It's fast-moving commercial goods. It's not the same as travel. But we see similar examples. Our next speaker is actually from Holland, so he'll know all about KLM. But KLM, I love them. I love KLM because they're really good at PR. They tell everybody that they're the best, the most social airline in the world. When you take a flight with KLM, they tell you, we will respond to your tweet and your Facebook post within the hour, and that's not true, because I actually needed them to help me, and I missed my flight because they didn't respond to my tweet. So it's not true. They're very good at PR and using social media to give the impression. Actually, they really screwed up as well. Sorry, translators. I hope this is translatable. So they actually posted a tweet when Netherlands beat Mexico. Adios, amigos. I guess they thought they were funny. It's Dutch humor, right? I actually thought it was funny. But I guess if I'm Mexican, I probably don't think it's very funny. And they actually had a bit of a reaction there. Can everyone read that? Yeah? Okay. I don't have to repeat it then, because they'll translate that, and then I just don't know if that will work. So, yeah, so it can backfire. So it didn't just backfire, because Gael Garcia, he has a lot of followers on Twitter, so that's a lot of people getting a bad reaction there. And you know how patriotic people can be, so they really will not fly on KLM, because that's very offensive for them. But Aeromexico decided that that was actually a good opportunity, and this is what really surprised me, and I have to give credit to our researcher, because I did not find this. They actually put a sponsored tweet welcoming all the people who have deserted KLM and welcoming them back. So that's a really good example of an opportunity and seizing that opportunity when your competitors screw up. So there you go. He didn't tweet about that. He should have, actually. But I guess he probably got a free flight or something. So opportunity is when timing is everything. But we've also seen, and we see this all the time in tourism. In tourism, we have to talk a lot and plan a lot for crisis management. And this is actually where technology can be so, so powerful, because we've seen amazing examples. Actually, now thinking about it, haven't got examples here. But there was 337,000 people retweeted someone who was very influential and was very angry about the government's action on the Malaysian Airlines flight. And then they actually crowdsourced an action to try and find the planes. So they actually encouraged the community to start looking all over the sea to try and find the planes. So it's really good examples of technology. And we see this with every disaster, that all of that data can actually be used for real good. And sometimes very basic, just communicating with people. When we go back to marketing, this is a very bad example, and they've actually screwed up twice since this disaster. So Malaysian Airlines did a campaign to try and bring people back to Malaysian Airlines, which was called Your Ultimate Bucket List. List 10 places you'd like to go to before you die, which obviously is really stupid. And I feel very sorry for them, because they got a lot of bad press, and whoever did that is probably now fired. But I don't think it was deliberately bad humor. It was just stupid. And they've actually done more things since that. So when you're in that position and you're working in an environment where there is a crisis, and this happens in tourism all the time. We all remember bird flu, the mad cow disease in the UK. It happens constantly, and we have to be very sensitive because we communicate in very humorous ways, and that can suddenly change when things go wrong. Going on to the planning stage, mobile commerce is huge. We do our biggest event called the Digital Tourism Innovation Campus in Barcelona. We're actually working with Mobile World Capital. But we pulled these figures up from Forrester, and I think this is completely wrong. This is predictions for mobile commerce spend, where they predict by 2017 there's going to be 19 million euros worth of transactions on mobile. I'm sure that's already exceeded that. And what we know is that that is definitely wrong, because when they produced the study last year, they didn't know about this little thing, Apple Pay. And of course, most of you Android users are probably sitting there thinking, God, it's not new. Why is everyone talking about Apple all the time? But what we know is that when Apple do something, it acts as a catalyst for everybody else to really do it properly. So we know that from next year, we're going to see a lot of mobile payments. For those of you who didn't realize what this is, it's one fingerprint purchase on a website, not only at a till in a shop, it's also buying an airline ticket with one finger click. That's going to transform how we buy travel. And for the small businesses who are really smart and have worked with developers, that actually enables them to sell and to upsell within the destination. I'm the sort of person where if I can buy something on a mobile in a really cool way, I will, just to see if it works. And Starbucks are a good example of a brand that have actually jumped onto the idea that there's actually a lot of early adopters who like to just try things. So they have a brilliant mobile payment system, and they're actually considered the world's third largest bank because of all the money they've stored thanks to their mobile payment system. So people really like to try new things, and that's where there's also opportunities. Airlines are also a good benchmark to look at because whilst the rest of the industry is making mobile optimized sites, which are responsive sites, airlines take a very different approach. They create mobile-only websites. 76% of airlines, on a recent study, actually had mobile-only websites, which were completely different to their desktop sites because they understand their customers' needs and they design with a customer-centric approach to what they do. They understand that the needs of a mobile customer are completely different to the needs of a desktop customer, and therefore they need to design a completely new solution from the bottom up. We're also seeing that mobile is really important when it comes to hotel bookings. According to Expedia, hotel bookings carried out in the 24 hours before a trip were made on a mobile device. So people are actually using mobile at the very last minute point. And we see new business models emerging out of that. A company called Hotel Tonight has become very successful, and they distribute and sell hotel rooms which are purchased just on the day that you're in a city. And that's their entire business, and they now employ, I think, over 100 people. So they're really a big success because of the opportunities coming about thanks to mobile. And then en route, we know that maps are very, very important for travelers. People rely on maps to orientate themselves. I'm glad there's been a lot of talk about geolocalization. Yes, that was you. Yes, there we go. And I just thought, well, that was quick. But that's a quick look at a recent trip I made to Copenhagen. I use many, many different apps. I didn't use the tourist board app, even though we work with them. I think we were going to meet them. But this is just the reality. So it's really important for the tourism industry to get to understand that the most important thing is opening up data and making it available so that that really creative developer community, many of whom we've seen today and yesterday, are able to create solutions with that. And real-time information is really key. So as a traveler, this is just a very simple example of how real-time information can transform an experience. In this case, it's actually using real-time push notifications about flights, but very practical things such as telling you which gate you're flying from, and whether your flight is delayed, and also how long you need to leave to get to an airport. This is really changing travel. So in the destination, we've looked at some studies, and we see that, as I said at the beginning, customers really want to see their personal devices used to improve their customer experience. People want things like automated check-in, easy access to amenities, in-room hotel upgrades, being able to book things, buy things, do everything on their mobile. So if you're an accommodation provider, first thing you have to think is, do we provide Wi-Fi? I can tell you, hope I'm not going to be in trouble for this, the lovely guest house I'm in, as lovely as it is offline. And that's very frustrating when you also only have Edge and a very slow one. So you need to think about this in the hotel sector, but going much, much further than that, there's real opportunities to sell and to create really good experiences within that. So not just about connecting people and creating ambassadors. And here's an example of, I'll go back, Viator. This is a company which focuses entirely on selling tours in destinations. And Viator have created a fantastic mobile app, which is a good benchmark, because in 3 taps you can buy a tour of a city, pretty much all the major cities in the world. And they've done it in a really smart and easy way, recognizing your location and providing relevant offers and products. We heard a bit about iBeacons this morning. This is a good example of iBeacons in the tourism industry. This is the Rubens Museum in Antwerp. Is anybody from Belgium here? No? Anybody from the UK? No, no, not at all. And nobody from the UK. Okay, great. So nobody's seen this then. So this is the Rubens Museum. Is that better? This is the Rubens Museum, and they've actually used iBeacons to push relevant information about the different paintings within the museum through to people using a tablet device. And this is really, really powerful. This is transforming the experience, the visitor experience, in an amazing way. And it's not just about marketing when we talk about technology. It's also about product. And for those people who know the basics of marketing, you know about the 4 Ps of marketing. And one of the P's is product. And sometimes we forget that. We forget it's important to have a really good product. And it doesn't matter whether you're a full destination or whether you're a single attraction, you need to think about whether your product is relevant today. So something like this, a very old product, Rubens is a famous painter, they've managed to make that very relevant and engaging for their visitors today. So there may not be a direct return when you think about marketing values, but it's keeping their product continuously fresh and interesting. And actually, this is the sort of thing which people talk about, and now I certainly want to go there to see that myself. So enabling your visitors is really key. Here's the beach in Barcelona, connected. This is really important. As we see 4G now becoming much more mainstream, well, I think we're going to see some changes there, and as Europeans, maybe, if we're lucky, by next year, December 2015, we may also be able to scrap roaming charges. So the need for Wi-Fi might not be quite what it is, but still people coming from outside of Europe are going to need that. I'm seeing some disagreement there. And then post-trip, this is what sharing looks like today. This is a photo of some girls in a pub. This was taken by my colleague, and this is how people share today. They sit there around the table. They don't talk to each other. They send pictures to each other across the table. Whether you think this is strange or not, this is the reality, and we need to somehow get it into that conversation. It's also an opportunity. Does anyone know this picture? No? You do. Where is it? United States. Exactly, where they go to die. So if you're a plane, if you're a jumbo jet, this is where you will go in the next few years. This is the plane graveyard. I had to find an excuse to put it in because it's such a cool picture. There are thousands and thousands of aircraft which go to Texas to die because actually the climate is really good for preserving all the parts. And they actually take out the engines and recycle certain parts. But if you're into that, I think you'll find it a very interesting. That's a niche travel, that is, and nobody's even seemed to have thought of it. But the reason I put this here is really to say nothing about planes, but actually, when we think about how we market our destination or our brand or our hotel, we often talk about social media. And what I was saying right at the start is about the fast change that's taking place. And we take for granted that something like Facebook will be around forever. If you look at this, you'll recognize some of these social platforms, and most of them are now in the graveyard because they're no longer relevant. Did anybody use Second Life? I'm very curious to know. Yeah, I'm going to speak to you later because that's really cool. I remember someone very seriously telling me to use Second Life and to create a community when I was promoting Europe as a job. I'm glad I didn't do that. One of those social networks has very successfully rebranded and relaunched themselves. That's Foursquare. They look completely different. And it's worth looking at because this is a brand which said, hey, if we're going to remain and exist, we need to remain relevant for our customers. Completely changed their strategy. And if you're a tourism business thinking, the world is changing, how do I keep up? You just need to think about whether you're still providing the right solutions for your customers today. So Facebook is still the #1 platform. It's still very important. But what we see is that those younger groups are now deserting it, probably because their parents are all on Facebook, so they don't want to be near it. And just to show you a really great example, Coca-Cola crowdsourced more than 200,000 photos during the Brazil World Cup. And they actually opened the event with an unveiling of a real photo flag. This is a great example, and I know we speak a lot about crowdsourcing here when we talk about technology, but this is a great example of crowdsourcing content to create really powerful, compelling brand interactions. Of course, Coca-Cola is a huge brand, but any destination can do this. A destination like Portugal is well known around the world, and you can really do amazing things with all the conversations and content shared. Here's some simpler examples of destinations and how they've actually done that. Here's a site of Discover Northern Ireland. They've gathered lots of user content and created it in a way that people can share and engage. Very simple, but they're using other people's content to communicate their message. And here is also Iceland doing something very similar. Iceland actually created a site called Inspired by Iceland. It was a campaign, but as they've seen the web change, they decided to shift the focus and actually make that their entire site. So they've now scrapped their traditional government marketing site, and they've now created a completely user-generated content site to promote Iceland because they've understood the importance of the customer and the customer story. So all of this has caused us to rethink the travel cycle completely. And it's really important to innovate. Here is a picture of a hackathon taking place in an airport hangar in South Africa. So not only is a hackathon, for you guys probably not, but for the tourism industry it's very new. We did a hackathon in Barcelona, and most people said, what's that? They had no idea what it was. But also doing it somewhere like that is really great for an industry to get behind it. And there is apparently a hackathon taking place here as well, so I'm curious to know more about that. So, if I've got time, Vitor, do I have time?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
A little bit time.
I'm pushing it, I know. I've combined two presentations here because I thought this was also interesting. So when we talk about the future of travel, we talk about the digital natives. We saw just before the lunch a digital native talking about the really inspiring work that he's been doing. So we know what digital natives are. They're young people, under 35, grown up with the internet, and they don't really see any difference between online and offline, and there's loads of different words to describe them. I'm not really that interested in that. What we were interested in when we conducted a study this summer is how mobile is changing their decisions when they travel. So we conducted a study. We did it in partnership with WISE, the World Youth Student Travel Association. And I'm going through a bit fast because I don't want to bore you all. But we looked at two different places. One which we considered a destination, which was the Queen Elizabeth Park, and the other which we considered an attraction, the V&A. The first question here is, and don't be ashamed, does anybody know, just put your hand up if you know what the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park is. One, two, that's great, perfect. Now, if you ask anybody who's involved in that, they assume the whole world knows about it. So that's a big mistake. And just put your hand up if you know about the V&A. So it's a well-qualified audience we have here then, because this is something that most digital natives didn't know about. Well, these are two different places in London, and we wanted to understand where mobile played a role. So we wanted to see, first of all, what their knowledge about each place was. Second of all, what their reactions were after browsing a full and a mobile-optimized website. And third, how do these two websites impact their own perceptions of the place? So first of all, looking at the V&A, we found that most people had no idea what it was. And we conducted these surveys standing right outside it. This is the most populous tourist concentration in London. And people were standing right outside it when we asked them. And they actually had no idea what it was. It's the sixth most popular attraction in the UK with over 3 million visitors. But most people said, I've never heard about the museum, and this is quotes from our survey panel. The same was the case with the Olympic Park. So for those of you who don't know, this is the 2012 Olympics reconstruction. They made a visitor park out of it, which is supposed to be a really big thing. But most people have no idea what it is. And just an example of someone who actually traveled by it every day, really had no idea what was there. So we wanted to see what their perceptions were. I will skip through this. But basically, the message here is that if you have a really low brand perception, if people don't know about your product or your destination, and they are out and about in the destination, then mobile is really important. You rely on that mobile brand experience to deliver every single thing. So you can't afford to not be mobile optimized. So we conducted this survey. Here's some people doing our research. We gave them lots of questions and lots of tasks. And these are the sort of reactions we had when they looked at non-optimized websites. They said things like, I don't think it's for mobile, I think it's quite small. I don't like it, it's not suitable for smartphones. These are just the general comments we had. A very negative reaction from almost every single participant who took part in this. Basically, they reacted to the fact that it wasn't mobile, although we didn't ask them whether they liked the fact that it wasn't mobile or not. And when we showed them a mobile website, they reacted very positively. And they said it looks great. They actually didn't comment that it was mobile optimized. They just said they liked it. So their reaction was just positive because it was a well-performing site for a mobile device. That's probably not a surprise. But then when we looked at actually how that changes their own perception of the actual attraction, we had some quite interesting results. So I hope this is clear. I will stand a bit to the side. So the red indicates the reaction to the full website, and the green to the mobile optimized website. And we asked them if they thought it was creative, interesting, easy, pleasant, clear, and attractive. And as you can see, much, much better reactions to the mobile optimized site. Probably still not a huge surprise, but the mobile sites perform much, much better. The same was the case with the Olympic Park, a much bigger difference because the mobile site was really, really good, and the overall perception was very, very significantly better. But then what we wanted to see is how the difference between the two sites actually changes their perception. And first thing we looked at was their reactions. They found that the images on the websites really changed how they perceived them, that the choice of photos were really important and had an instant impact, that the visual content, visual signposting on a website was really key, and the overall design and the navigation was really important as well. We also found that the content will influence their decision to visit. And if it's really good content, it will drive them there. And if it's really not the right content, it will drive them away. And in the case of the V&A, we had a lot of reactions that people actually thought that it was a shopping mall or some kind of fashion thing for women. What they didn't understand is that it's about contemporary fashion and it's a museum that actually is not at all a shopping mall. But that's just because of the choice of pictures that they had. On the mobile device, they had photos of catwalks and women's hats. So the men immediately said, no, not interested at all in that. But actually, this was a museum. So here's the difference. So when we look at non-optimized websites, this is the change from how they initially thought, their initial perception of the attraction compared to their perception after browsing a standard full website. And as you can see, before they started the test, they were average, that's indicated by the blue, and after, their perception actually went down. So this is when they start off knowing nothing at all about the V&A. After they browse a non-mobile optimized website, they decide that it's probably not the sort of thing they want to go to. That's simplifying it, but I have to be fast. So the same was the case with the Olympic Park. Their initial perception indicated by the blue, it's a bit harder to see, and their post-browsing perception indicated by the green when we looked at mobile optimized website. So we actually see that when they looked at a mobile optimized website, their perception actually increased from knowing nothing about it, and when they looked at a non-mobile optimized site, their perception actually decreased. These are quite small differences, but when you consider that's a decision between going somewhere and not going somewhere, and that's actually a significant loss or gain of customers. What we also saw is the importance of context, importance of relevant information about where they are, and they asked for things like making sure that they geolocate themselves, making sure that they're able to point out where they are. These pictures were taken right in front of the galleries, and most people didn't have a clue where they were. So immediacy was really key. Getting an instant overview with the right images, the right graphics, and the right information was really, really important. And also providing the most simple things, such as opening hours, is the sort of thing that a lot of brands and a lot of attractions completely overlook. They don't seem to think it's important. It's really important to understand those customers who are using mobile. So when we looked at the takeaways, the most important thing was to speak about the experience when it comes to the mobile experience, as well as the experience of the attraction, what it has to offer, to use visual content in a really smart way to communicate exactly the right message in a single second about what it is that it has to offer, and make sure that that's the right information. Always thinking about location, location, location. Where is your visitor? What is the context? And what information is relevant to where they're standing when they're browsing? And of course, exceeding their expectations. When you exceed their expectations, it's very, very positive. But when you disappoint them, it's also very negative. So those reactions between non-optimized and optimized websites were quite contrasting, both positive and negative. So that's it. I'll leave you with that thought. I do have a video to play, so if I can play it, but that's it. I'm done. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
We watched a lot as it set from the sun. All the ways we could run, all the ways we could run. Oh my, yeah. Can you see the light from outer space? What was said, what was done, as the time had arrived. All the ways we could run, all the things we could try. Oh my, can you tell me where this is gonna lead? And all the lights are shining on the sea as the rolling waves crash along the beach. And our minds were meant to sail, take a rest from our thoughts, take a break from this world, and we'll feel miles away from the places that we used to be. As we lay in the sand and we stare at the sky, watch the moon dancing white as the stars light your eyes. Oh my, there's no place on earth I'd rather be. And my, this night just don't feel real, but I can feel your touch